Welcome to United Glazing Show. I hope everybody is so fine. Hello, Rich. Welcome. How are you today?
Hi, how are you, Alana? I'm doing well, thank you very much.
Me
Looking
too.
forward to another segment of our show together.
Yeah, me too. I'm so excited about it. So I'm not gonna make everybody wait, and I'm just running through my questions.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so I want to learn about typical metal panel types. So my first question is, what are the typical metal panel types?
So we have several types of metals panels that we would use on the facade, exterior facade of a building. You could also use them on the interior, but for today's segment, we'll basically talk about the exterior facade of the building. So typically what you would most likely see would be an ACM panel, which is an aluminum composite material panel, which we'll get into that makeup in a little bit. You have plate panels. When I say plate panel, that's going to be like a single skin or solid metal panel. It could be made out of metal. It could be made out of aluminum. It could be made out of bronze. It could be made out of zinc. I've seen all different materials. So, but yeah, it would be just that material itself in a thickness, like a 4 millimeter thickness, a 6 millimeter thickness, whatever, the architect specifies. So that would be a plate panel. We also have translucent panels, which is going to be a fiberglass style or fiberglass type of panel, which is going to be made almost similar to a window, but we'll get into that. We'll break that one down. And then we also have perforated panels that we would use on a job, which would be a hybrid of a plate panel, in that it's going to be a solid material, but it's going to have a perforation pattern or holes or designs cut into them to either allow airflow or to create a design. So we can start off with, I'm going to say probably the most typical that a lot of people would see, or that you would see out in your local city, would be an ACM panel. An ACM panel is short for aluminum composite material. There are multiple manufacturers throughout the world that make these ACM panels. The aluminum composite material panel is basically going to be a very thin layer of aluminum, then a core, and then another very thin layer of aluminum. So you're basically making a sandwich over a core. Oh. And we can change the cores, which we'll speak about in 1 second. But basically, it's going to be a very simple, a very easy, and a very fairly cheap method to make a panel for the exterior facade of the building. Because it's an aluminum skin, you could have it as an anodized material, or you can have it as a painted material. Most common would be the painted material, because each of these main manufacturers are aligned with a paint company, and you could basically make this any color an architect can come up with and get a color code for. They can make the ACM panel that color. So that gives the architect or designer a lot of options as to what color and his building will look like. So like I'd mentioned, the composite material is going to be an aluminum sheet, an inner core, and then an aluminum sheet. And since you have two aluminum sheets, like we talked about, you have a color on one side. If you want to have a different color on the inside, you can have a different color on the inside. But generally, that inner face of that panel is generally going to be against a stud wall or a dense glass wall or a block wall. So chances are you're not really going to see that inner face of the panel, because it's going to be an exterior facing panel most of the time, probably 95% of the time. So that interior core, what these two thin pieces of aluminum are laminated to, could be either a PE core or an FR core. Those are the two most common that most of the manufacturers designate for their cores. A PE core is going to be the cheapest core. It's a polyethylene core, so it's basically a plastic core. So basically, you're going to take this piece of aluminum, you're going to glue it against the piece of polyethylene, and then the same with the opposite side, where you're going to have the interface, and you're going to glue it together. It's going to be compressed together under high pressure, and it's never going to come apart.
So
again,
that's why it's the cheapest?
A polyethylene plastic core. It's cheapest, yes. And also because it's plastic, it's never going to rust. It's never going to get waterlogged. It's never going to deform, because the plastic will repel water and moisture. So it's going to be a very good properties and characteristics against weather, dampness, and so you don't have to worry about anything with staining or rusting or anything like that, because again, it's aluminum and it's also plastic on the inside. There is a downside to this now, and most larger cities, if you're going above, most cities require an FR core. And then I think just by general code itself, anything above 40 feet has to be an FR core. FR means fire resistant.
Oh,
so,
that's why.
Plastic will burn, it will melt, and it will give off toxic fumes. So if you have a high-rise building and you're 60 feet up, and you think of most fire trucks, in your local city, the ladders go up a certain height. They might go up to 30 feet or so.
Yeah, you're right.
So if you have an 80, 90, 100 story or 100 foot tall building, and you have this regular core, and God forbid there's a fire on the building, you're releasing these toxic fumes that could potentially get into the building and cause more harm to the people inside the building. So with an FR core, it's going to be a tested core to the standard agency that rates these, and the whole, in addition to the core, the whole assembly, the whole makeup of the panel, the system, and any backup material has to meet fire resistance and fire rating codes. So that way, God forbid there is an issue like that, if it does burn, you're not going to get those same type of fumes. So it's not going to have any adverse effect to the tenants that are inside of the building. So the FR core is going to be a little bit more of a rigid core. It's going to be a little bit more expensive because it's a different material that's made. And one of the things that several of the manufacturers do, because, if you just look at a panel and say, okay, it's a panel. Yeah. But when you have a architect or a consultant coming to make sure that you're utilizing the proper material, the manufacturers actually do something that's very interesting. They'll actually make the FR core a different color than the PE core. So if you're on a commercial building, you say, okay, I can tell right off the bat, yes, that's the FR core because it's this color. And each manufacturer might have a different color. So I can't just give you a general say one is black and one is white, but it's almost as simple as that. So if you have manufacturer A, their FR core is one color and their PE core is a different color. Same with manufacturer B, they may have one color and a different color for each of the cores.
So we can divide them from their colors?
Yeah, of the inside. So again, if you take the panel, which you would only see the outside face, you turn it on edge, so you see an aluminum sheet, and in the middle there's a core. The color of the core on the inside would be a different color.
Oh, okay.
All right. Nice. So now, the PE core in some locations can be used below 30 feet or below 40 feet. On each area or each region of the world will have different codes. So I don't want to say specifics here about that because each area is going to be different. But again, because it's a lower area. But again, if you have an area of like just a storefront for your local, hardware store or whatever it might be, and it's only a single story building and you have some windows and then you have a panel on top of it, that's an area where you use a PE core because again, there's nothing above you. So if there are any fumes, it's not going to affect any floors higher than you. And again, since it's a retail store, you're not going to have people living in there. So if there is an issue, again, you're not having the concentration of people within an area. So I don't want to, knock the PE core because it's commonly used, but again, you have to understand the limitations and your local codes as to where you can and can't use the PE core panel versus the FR core panel.
So it's really important to, it's really very important to know the facts about PE and FR core.
Of course, yes. But now, your architect or your local building department will have your requirements. So, before you go out and, order something, you should just make sure that you're in compliance with all local codes and requirements. but generally the architect or the consulting firm will say in a specification section, say, ensure that the FR core is utilized, or, or it'll give you the option of what you can or can't do. So that's, now again, ACM is a very great panel. It's, again, like I say, it's a fairly cheap and easy and quick panel to get. And again, like I said, there's multiple manufacturers. So the manufacturers each have their own independent installation details. Like some people will make a return corner on it and add a clip onto it, and you screw the clip to your wall. Others, will interlock where panel 1 is hung on to panel 2, panel 2 is hung on to panel 3, and they interlock, and then you screw through flanges. So, each manufacturer would have different ways of attaching it. But again, it's a fairly standard, straightforward system that you can use, and it will be able to cover a lot of square footage on a building fairly quickly and fairly cheaply. So it's a very commonly used product.
That sounds
so
great.
Another type of panel, yes, okay, and again, you'll see those. So many buildings have these. Again, if you see, this could be around the window system. It could be on a sheer wall where you have no windows and just a panel wall going up. And again, the other positive on these ACM panels, it's a very lightweight panel because you have a very thin layer of aluminum skin on each side and a plastic core. It's very lightweight, so it's very, very easy to maneuver manpower wise. So, which is different than the next panel we'll talk about, which is going to be an aluminum sheet panel or a plate panel. So now we all know that aluminum is going to have some weight to it. So now, I'm sorry, let me just check 1 second, because the one important thing I forgot about the ACM panels is that they're very rigid. The plastics, the aluminum we know is a flexible material. And when I say it's a very thin layer and a thin layer with a core inside it, that core gives you structure. So now if you had the thin piece of aluminum by itself, it's going to want to, if you get doing large sheets, it's going to want to, what known in the industry is called oil canning. You might get some ripples where it looks like, okay, it's not flat, it's not true. And that's one of the biggest issues with architects. It needs to look perfect. It needs to look perfectly flat. So with the core, because the aluminum is attached and glued to the core under high pressure, it's going to be very straight. So as straight as your core is as straight as your panel is. So when you go to a plate panel, and again, whether it be aluminum, bronze, zinc, whatever material you might be using, or steel itself, again, the thicker the panel, the straighter it's going to be. The thinner the panel over a large surface, it's going to want to start to bow, especially when the sun hits it. You're going to get deflection in the panel through the heat, and once it warms up and cools down, it's going to want to deflect and deform. So generally, the way you overcome that is to design a thicker panel or add stiffeners onto the back of it. So if going off a ACM panel, since it's plastic, the same square footage of an ACM panel is probably 1/3 to 1/4 of the weight as a 1/4 inch aluminum panel would be, just because you're having plastic rather than a metal or a solid material in there. So one of the benefits of the composite panel is the lightweight and the ease of using it. But now going back to the plate panel, you're going to see plate panels on, I've seen them a lot on airports. I've seen them a lot on sides of buildings where you're having larger areas. It's just going to be a design aesthetic for an architect, what he or she wants to see. Mm-hmm. You have some limitations to sheet sizes of plate panels. A lot of manufacturers will go up to probably about 5 foot wide by about 12 foot long. And then also when you need to form these panels in a shop, you have the brake presses and bending machines. So the typical size around by us are 14-foot presses and bending machines. I have seen some larger ones, but they're fewer, and you need specialty companies that would have the larger size machines. So when you have again, so you can be limited a little bit with the size of the sheet of a plate panel, and also the weight. So you might need a heavier substrate to hang a panel on the wall because it's got additional weight behind it. But now again, aluminum, bronze, steel, zinc all have just different characteristics to the composition of the material itself, whereas aluminum can be a very fine and flat finish, very like glass-like, it's like very smooth. Bronze, although it's going to be smooth, also you're going to get striations in it where you're going to almost have like graining. It's almost like a little bit like wood, where if you oxidize it or you stain it, you get some of that graining look on it. And again, a lot of architects like that look also, so at times they might specify that just because of the look you get, whereas that you wouldn't get with a painted finish. So that would be one of the reasons why you do it. And another reason, if you went with a bronze is, it seems like some of the higher end buildings, you could, they have bronze on the same. It's like, oh, look at me, I have a bronze building, so you almost, I don't want to say showing off, but it's showing that it's a higher end product because it's a little bit more expensive. It's a lot more workmanship needs to go into it to form the bronze panels. But again, it's almost going to be a status symbol to say that, hey, we have bronze pieces, surrounding my main doors and my main entry. That way people see it and, they understand that they're walking into a high-end building.
Yeah, and you know what I understand? I think about like this. The plate panel is like more aesthetic.
It can be. I've seen it both ways, where because again, you're talking a metal surface, so there's only so much you can do with metal, whereas you couldn't do with wood per se. Like wood, you could almost form into almost an arch. I've seen, although you can arch some of these panels, it's a lot more workmanship, a lot more time in the shop goes into that. I've seen things more commonly being segmented when you're trying to make an arch or a round area. You'll segment panels, so it gives you the appearance of a round from far away. But if you get up close, you're not going to see that perfect round. You're going to see panels that almost have a straight to a straight with an angle between them, but it's a very slight angle just to give you that appearance of being in an arched area. So again, there's the plate panels. Again, it was just I'm going to say the ACM panels are newer, and when I say newer, they're still 25 years old to 30 years old. But again, before that, there was if you wanted a metal panel, it was either a steel panel that was painted or aluminum panel was painted. And like I say, we've now since gone into a more high-end and exotic metals like the zincs, which I've seen, and the zinc will oxidize. I've seen copper panels again, which will oxidize, and again, it just gives you a more natural look. So it's going to be all aesthetics as to what the architect wants. And then again, when you're talking the exotic metals, you're talking they're all going to come at a premium price. So it's also it might be that status symbol that I have this type of material on my building. Right.
So,
we also have cool top. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, to say we look at the cheapest.
Well, again, a lot of times budget is a main factor. Yeah. So if you have an area like a smaller area, you just need to close it off. ACM is a perfect match to fill in there. If you want to do a full facade wall, again, you could certainly do it in ACM. But again, you may want to just make it look different. And again, they're both going to do the same job by covering up an area for you. They're both going to have a hanging system that has to be attached back to the structure. And it's just is the weight of the panel is going to be a big issue. So you need to understand, if it's going to be a plate panel, there's significant more weight to it. So that sometimes is a big design issue to the engineers, saying how much weight they want hung off, the side of their buildings. So we also have something called a translucent panel. Translucent panels are almost like windows. Where you might regularly see translucent panels would be in a gymnasium, way high up at the top. You have windows that are up there that aren't clear, that you can't see through, so it'll be like almost like a frosted area. These are used, again, they're basically you don't want people looking in on you, but you want to have light coming in. You can use these translucent panels. There's several companies here in the United States that make these. They have their own systems, and it's almost like a thick panel. I want to say it's going to be almost 4 inches to 5 inches thick. They have their own frame system that you would install almost as if it was a window, but they are not operable. They're going to be fixed stationary panels. And why? They can almost fall into the window category or the panel category. But if you look up in the specification section, it's actually called a translucent panel. So that's why we're talking about it today. And again, because it's not operable, like a lot of people think of a window as something that opens, you can get fresh air in, whereas a translucent panel is more of a fixed unit. Again, and it's technically, you're not looking through it because it's going to be an obscure or a matted color. So like I say, it will let light in, but you can't clearly see through it. There's not a lot to talk about with those. They're used for very limited applications. They are fairly cheap, so I guess you would use this in an area where you don't want to have like a full metal window where you have a lot of aluminum or steel around the frame, and it just becomes a bigger, bulkier look. Like this panel could basically just be held in with around you. And it's, again, because it's fiberglass, it's fairly lightweight, easy to use, and easy to maneuver with manpower. So you're not looking to have a lot of manpower there to lift it. And it's fine for what it does. It has some thermal characteristics to it because of the thickness of it. But again, there's not a lot with it that you have to worry about. It's more for specialized applications where you want to have just some natural light coming through, but not everything that's that you don't want to have like actual visibility coming through. So other than that, though, we have perforated panels. So perforated panels will be a sheet panel or a plate panel. Again, it could be any of the materials such as the bronze, the aluminum, the zinc, the copper, whatever you want it to be. And we've used these in the past for two specific reasons. I've used them in, let's call it like a light box or a shadow box area where you have a large panel, maybe 8 foot tall, 4 foot wide, and on a laser jet machine with the CAD program, they'll cut out and cut little holes in it to make a design, whether it looks like flowers, whether it looks like trees, whether it looks like the company logo of the building you walk into. You place that into a frame, you put light behind it, and then all of a sudden you're seeing this design. And again, I think the best application would be for like a company logo. All of a sudden you see the company logo come through. So it's giving you a very sophisticated look of, it's because it's not just a piece of plastic with, just a stenciled, or a painted logo on it. It's, you're giving your clients, this look of sophistication now by having, a perforated panel here. Another place that's very typical for perforated panels is if you think on top of the roof of apartment buildings, a lot of times they have water tanks up there that feed the water for the building. So you pump water up the tank at the top, and then you always have a reserve of water up there. Now, who wants to see a big tank or big air conditioning units up on the top of the roof of the building? So what architects will do is they'll design a perimeter panel to go around there. I've seen it just be plate panels before, but remember, the higher up you go, you're getting wind loads going up there. So if you have like a big flat panel up there, it's almost going to act as it's a sail almost, or you get a lot of pressure on that. So by putting holes or perforations, whether it be circles, whether it be ovals, whether it be slots, whatever it may be, whatever the architect wants his design to be, that's going to allow the wind to pass right through it. So it's not going to deform or deflect or take wind loads against it. It's going to allow the wind to pass through it. But by the same token, it's giving you your blockage, so you're not seeing a mechanical piece of machinery up on the roof. Additionally, you might see perforated panels in between balconies of adjacent apartments. You might have something that's solid there, or you may have slats that go there, or you might have a perforated panel that goes there. Again, they can have little holes that you're not really going to see through, but again, it's going to allow wind to come through. So, it's not going to bend or deflect out of place if there's a high wind area up there, but it's going to give you the privacy of what you're looking for. So with a perforated panel, you're going to have the availability to, again, since it's going to be made out of a metal, you can either paint it, you could stain it, you could oxidize it, and then again, like whatever design you could think of, and you could put it into a CAD machine, you can put that back on your water jet cutter, and then that will make that design or that logo or that pattern come out for you, and that you're able to utilize for whatever application you're looking for. But again, the most common places I've seen it is going to be as designs walking in like a lobby area in a high-end building. And also the next most common area that I've seen it in is going to be enclosures for mechanicals on the roofs of buildings, just so you're not seeing all the mechanicals that are back there, just to make it look aesthetically pleasing to adjacent buildings looking across at your building. So those are the typical types of panels that I've dealt with here, here in New York. Deal with them a lot. I've dealt with all the different materials that we've spoken about now. Again, like I say, I don't have problems with any of them. I've used them all, like them all, and it's just, again, it's we're basically providing to the owner what the architect came up with and designed for, and we're able to provide that for him and not just make his dream a reality or make his vision a reality. So
it's like I mean, ACM is the best, I think, right? The ACM panel is the best.
It's going to be the cheapest and quickest to get, and it's one of the easier ones to work with because of the lightweightness or the weight of the material. So it's going to make it easier for you to utilize when you're installing it on the building. So I do like ACM a lot, but again,
me too.
As long as you use the FR core on your residential buildings, we're all good here.
Okay, so thank you very much about the information that you give us about metal panel types.
I loved it. I thank you so much for today's episode, and I look forward to our next episode together.
Me too. So thank you, Rich. Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody who's watching us. So see you next episode.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.